Hey, so we're looking at personalities now. You should have taken a personality test and now have be somewhat familiar with these phrases: sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholy. These terms actually go back really to the ancient world where they talked about there being four main temperaments of people. And so they're still used today. There are other personality tests that are incredibly valid. I mean, Myers-Briggs is probably the most famous one. The reason I didn't use Myers-Briggs is that Myers-Briggs has 16 different personalities, and I just think that's hard to like wrap your arms around. And this one's a little simpler. And actually, you can fit Myers-Briggs into the temperaments or four personalities that are here. But I think just learning these basic temperaments will at least help understand you better, also make you realize and understand other people better, and help you realize that like just because someone's different than you doesn't mean they're wrong. It's that they literally look at the world a little different and they go about the world differently. It can help you be a little more tolerant toward siblings or family members or your dad or maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend. So this should be a pretty cool. So you should have taken the test. You should already know if your primary is one of these four. We're going to deal with sanguine and choleric right now, and just a couple things. Notice that two things on the top. You see that's the extroverted. Okay, across the top are extroverted. That's what we're going to do today. And across the bottom, the phlegmatic and melancholies, they're introverted. We'll do them in a second lesson in tomorrow. So and then also on the left hand side, you notice that the phlegmatic and sanguines, they're the people that are they're people oriented. They really like people and like being around them. And then the choleric and the melancholies are much more task oriented, meaning they're always about getting stuff done and doing stuff, and maybe they're not quite as social as other people are, especially on the sanguine and phlegmatic side. Okay, so grab your chart. It should look like this. If you don't have this chart, there should be a PDF for you to print out so you can handwrite. If you're in my class, I've probably given you this, so we'll work together on it together, or you'll be doing some of it at home, perhaps. Okay, so first off, let's talk about sanguine. Sanguines, like whole philosophy of life, what fits them best is let's have fun. They all are about having a good time. So strengths, one, they are. Oh, here we go. Tips on being sanguine. Okay, they're cheerful, they're curious, they're creative, they're optimistic, they have energy, they're spontaneous, impulsive, assertive, goal oriented. Like they just like when you see a real sanguine, they stand out very quickly because they're usually kind of loud, maybe even maybe even obnoxious if they if they're not careful. And so they stand out in a crowd. They probably dress in a way that's kind of flashy and bring attention to themselves. I mean, they're looking for attention, those sanguines, and they get it usually. Okay, so let's look at it specifically. Okay, first off, under strengths, they're talkative. They're gonna like this is like a sanguine's a type of person who like they'll just start talking to you. They'll run the conversation. It's not a problem. Maybe they even you're at the grocery store and they'll just randomly start talking to you. They're a storyteller. They love to tell stories. Um, you might you might accuse me of being a storyteller if you've had me in class for very long, and that does fit my personality. I definitely have a sanguine side to me for sure. They're enthusiastic. They have a lot of energy, and so people just love that about the old sanguines. You know that enthusiasm. um, because of both these things being talkative and being enthusiastic, they kind of make friends easily. You know, the old idea like a sanguine never enters a room without knowing a friend. Like immediately they make friends. Like it's just easy for them to make friends. They like performance because of the showmanship of it. And then they're the life of the party. You know, they're dancing, they're beating, they feel the beat, they're singing, they're having a great time. They're the life of the party. Now, by the way, I'm just highlighting these personalities. There's much more in depth. There's actually a document that you should have clicked on after you took the test, and it has a very detailed list of strengths and weaknesses. Especially when you're talking about yourself, I really want you to analyze that list and kind of go, oh yeah, yeah, these are the things that apply. Not everything on that list applies to you, especially if you have a blend between two of the personalities, like you're sanguine phlegmatic, you're sanguine choleric, or you're melancholy phlegmatic, then some things will apply and some won't. But you should notice under the weaknesses are almost always the telltale thing of like what you really are. Because you're like, oh yeah, I really am that. Okay, let's look at weaknesses with sanguines. One, they talk too much. Like sometimes you just want to tell a sanguine to like shut up. Like this is the kid in class who tries to answer every freaking question, and you're like, dude, you just need to shut up. This is the person who you're having a conversation with, and it's like awkward. You're like, I'm not even listening because they just keep going. Okay, so sometimes sanguines on the negative end they need to take about a half of what they're thinking about saying and cut it in half and say only half of it. They're easily distracted. They're like the dog in the movie Up, where it's like squirrel. Okay, they get distracted very easily. Um, I had been accused of that at times. They're disorganized. Like their desk is probably a freaking landfill. Okay, their bedroom is probably a landfill. Like they just like they might not be able to, focus long enough to actually clean up anything. So they're kind of they're a little bit of a freaking hot mess, honestly. Because they'd rather talk. They'd rather talk and have fun, and that's cleaning up stuff is not fun. I mean, getting your laundry off your floor, like no. And sadly, with a sanguine, sometimes they don't have follow through. So they'll promise you things. They will promise and then not follow through, and you'll be disappointed. And you may think, by the way, that like it's an insult to you. It's not. They probably just forgot. Honestly, they probably literally forgot. Matter of fact, if you ask me for recommendations, and some of you probably have, like I literally tell you, you must harass me. Do you know why? Not because I don't love you, because I'll forget, because I'm a sanguine. And so like that is just reality. So I know my own weaknesses. So if you keep banging my head over it, banging me over the head with whatever it is you're supposed to remind me of, that's always best case scenario. Yeah, that's good. Emails and texts are always good. Okay, so that's sanguine. Okay, hopefully you've got kind of a feeling for it. If you want to look more in depth, again, look at that chart that I've got with all the weaknesses and strengths, and you can look through it and be like, oh my goodness, this is my mother, or wow, this is my grandmother, whatever. Okay, cool. Let's go to choleric. Their whole philosophy of life is let's get moving. They want to get work done. They want to get it accomplished. They want to check it off. They got places to go. They got people to meet. They got things to do, man, and they're gonna accomplish it. And if you're in their way, they'll probably push you. Okay, so that's the choleric. So they can get stuff done, but they also got the pushy side. Okay, so this is kind of like a bossy kind of personality, but like also can be like a leadership. So on the good side, they got that. So here's their strengths. So here's like the little preview. They're practical. They're often successful. They're very independent, goal oriented, analytical. Like they look at the data, they try to fix it, they get better. They're logical, decisive. They make decisions easily. They actually kind of like emergency situations like that. Actually, they like that, which is weird, but it's true. They do. They're competent. They're like kind of good at everything. Like they learn things, how to do things quickly. And they're tough minded. They're gonna if you get in their way and they fail, they're gonna come back and keep working. So that's the choleric. All right, so they're goal oriented. They like to think they'll end it if they end a day without accomplishing anything. That's when they're going to be depressed. They want to feel like they accomplished stuff. Sitting and watching Netflix all day is probably going to make a choleric actually pretty depressed. Whereas a phlegmatic like that sounds like a perfect day. They're strong willed. They're strong willed. They will keep fighting even when they've lost. Like they don't know when they've lost. But the strong will also helps them be very successful. It makes them take on challenging classes and be successful. So that's a good quality as well. They often find themselves leading groups, and they're usually good leaders. As long as they're not too bossy, if they've learned to kind of push that negative side back, then they're a born leader. They have no problem telling everybody else what to do. So if you have like, yeah, it was funny if you ever see like a 3-year-old who's choleric or a 4 or 5-year-old that's choleric, like they literally are trying to tell their parents what to do. You got to you got to be careful with that. You got to make sure they understand, the hierarchy in life. But you can see that it's kind of interesting. And they're driven. They got a drive to be successful, and often very independent. Like they don't want help from other people. Oftentimes they don't need help from other people because they already know how to do it. They're very independent. So again, this is probably like if there's a person in your family, like your mom, your dad, a grandparent, they're kind of the ones they're kind of in charge of every family get together. Like that's probably the choleric. Okay, it's probably someone who's choleric. Weaknesses though can be quite glaring with a choleric. They can be bossy. They can be careful. They just tell everybody what to do all the time, and people get mad. Um, they're kind of control freaks, so that leads to conflict because they kind of want their way, and they think they've got a way of doing things, and you should do it their way because they're right. And frankly, sometimes they usually are right, but that's kind of annoying. They often are very impatient. So, they're the ones blowing their horn at you as you're driving. They're impatient about waiting for people, waiting in line. Yeah, it's so that's a problem as well. I have definitely suffered from impatience problems in my life, but I'm much better than I used to be. And then they can't relax. They have to be moving, doing something every second. It's very hard for them to just sit down and do something. They got always feel like they're going to be doing something. So that can drive other people crazy. This is the person who like has so much excess energy that they shaking their leg all the time and they're kind of like right there. I find like I'm a little bit more patient than I used to be, just because I have a phone, so I can be reading something. Because I feel like I'm wasting time if I'm just sitting in line at the store or Subway or something. Like at least I have my phone, I can be accomplishing something by like reading. So these two personalities are the blend I have. I'm more choleric, I think, than sanguine, but definitely I have the mix of the two. So if I've ever bossed you around and also talk too much and easily distracted, now you understand the temperament that I have. Okay, that's it for that. There's a sort, by the way, that you're going to do on both of these, and you're going to sort them out. So you might want to study this for a minute and then go ahead and do the sort. All right, thanks.